as well. So I want to thank our speaker panel this morning. I want to give you a quick bio and introduction on everyone, just so that you know how well qualified they are to speak on this topic. But really, the biggest reason why I have them talk is sometimes nonprofits sort of share their stories with me, and they talk about how they approached a bank and they said, "Hey, where's all that CRA money you got? How do I get some of that CRA money you got?" And it occurred to me that we should probably, we did this program back in 2016 with Paul's help, and Lynette was also a panelist then. But it occurred to us that we should probably revisit this conversation. I hear it a couple times a year from someone who said that was their approach. So I'm sure these bankers are going to talk about how they feel about that approach. But in the meantime, let me give you a quick introduction. So Tony Smith is with PNC Bank. He's the Community Development Banking Manager. He leads the lending and investment in underserved markets in Chicago South and West Sides and surrounding region and in Wisconsin. He recently helped PNC craft a strategy to create $50 million in liquidity for community development financial institutions to fund the small business, the SBA PPP loans. And with the PNC Opportunity Zone Fund, Tony worked with the City of Chicago, the Chicago Housing Authority, and Habitat to reinvest in Ogden Commons, a mixed-use project in North Lawndale. He's very involved with these topics. He was recently named co-chair of the Inclusionary Housing Task Force by Mayor Lightfoot and appointed to the Economic Development Advisory Committee by Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. He's a summa cum laude graduate from Chicago State University and also has his MBA from University of Southern California. Served in the Marine Corps. Thank you for your service, sir. Apparently he knows his way around a helicopter and assigned to a very expensive piece of equipment on behalf of the Marines. He is also a recipient of the Presidential Service Medal, which is incredibly impressive. Teaches at business schools, advisory board member at a couple of different schools, DePaul and University of Chicago, and provides some published technical works with the Federal Reserve, National Association of Geographers. Tony, you'll have to explain that one to us at some point, and the American Bar Association. So thank you, Tony, and welcome. Lynette Briggs is also a Community Development Market Manager for TCF Bank. She's responsible for the bank's various community development activities in Illinois and Wisconsin regions. She evaluates lending, investment, and service activities and reports to management, noting possible areas of concern and strategies for improvement. Prior to TCF, she was a proud nonprofit professional. She worked with what was then called DHOC, DuPage Home Ownership Center, now is known as Home DuPage, as their bilingual housing counselor for 10 years, and also their residential loan underwriter for 10 years. She brings about a big background and robust background in affordable housing and financial education, including financial capabilities, pre-purchase, post-purchase, foreclosure prevention, and reverse mortgage, to the community organizations in the region with 20 plus years of experience. So, and talk about really, I actually know Lynette from a couple of different circles. She's so involved with the different nonprofits and even different sort of economic development opportunity programs through, right, Lynette, you were involved with the Family Self-Sufficiency Program to some degree as well. So supporter of that, the county's FSS program. And Paul Jarosh, I know I'm saying your last name wrong, Paul. How do I say it correctly?
I say Jarosh.
Jarosh, I knew it. There's the Jarosh Bakery in my neighborhood, so I'm saying your name based on the bakery, but that's not correct.
Every which way.
But Paul is the Senior Vice President and Director of Government Compliance at Oxford Bank and Trust. He oversees the compliance, including CRA, for the bank, which is a community bank operating in DuPage, has 30 plus years of experience with compliance, is a graduate of the ABA National and Illinois Bankers Compliance Schools. Wow, that's a lot of compliance training, Paul. Talk about being a definitive expert on this. Holds a business administration degree from U of I Urbana and MBA from and finance from Loyola. The reason why I got connected to Paul, and I think it was years ago, you reached out to me, or someone introduced us. I think a former board member of ours introduced us, but he founded and co-chair and chairs the CRA Now. It's a networking organization for CRA officers. We were just saying earlier that he has 70 or 80 folks in that networking group. Past president of the Chicagoland Compliance Association and has co-written articles on CRA with different compliance magazines as well. Paul is also very involved. I mean, man, I get emails from Paul just because he sees something and he thinks I ought to know about it, and I love that. As you all know, having that access to information is really great. He has volunteered with many, many different nonprofits as a board member, including DuPage Habitat, Teach, which used to be School and Tutors on Wheels, People's Resource Center, and Hope's Front Door. He is fond of the donut. I don't know how he feels about the cronuts. We'll find that out.
I had one actually this week. I didn't care for it that much.
Not so much. Okay, not so much with the
Regular
cronut, but that's
cake
for the donut. And he's almost done with his bucket list item of reading all the Agatha Christie mysteries, which that's kind of impressive. I assume then you've gone through all the Sherlock mysteries. I don't know. Maybe.
I've done that too. Yeah.
So. Yeah, he's like, I've already, that was the last decade I covered that. Yeah. Anyway, I think the reason why I wanted this program is to have sort of the experts share their thoughts and feedback. We are recording this program, so if you want to share this link with others later, feel free. You will get the presentation. So I know that's often a question that comes up. You will get the presentation for sure afterwards. So just keep that in mind. And I will be advancing slides so that they don't have to be doing that. And I will also be monitoring questions and chats. So if you have questions, please add them into the question field. Someone mentioned that they lost sound. I don't know if that's still the case. There was a moment where I think I stopped recording just for a second and then brought it back on. So if you are still experiencing sound issues, I recommend, since I'm only hearing that from one person, I assume it's going to be on your end. I would recommend just logging off of the webinar and coming back on. Let me know if that resolves it for you. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn off camera for me. I'm going to ask my panelists to go and turn off their cameras as well. And then we'll get started. All right, so I want to make sure people are seeing. If you could just give me a quick hello in the chat. You can see the presentation screen. I think we're good to go. That's what it's telling me, that the audience view has the presentation up. And I just gave you the introduction, Community Reinvestment Act, great resource for nonprofits. All right, here we go, Paul, all yours.
All right, thank you, Shefali. First of all, thank you all for attending. Hopefully you'll find this useful. And thank you for Shefali and giving DuPage for setting this up. So, you know, CRA is really pretty complex. So our intent is not to go into a deep dive of it, but to give you like the high points and the stuff that really affects the nonprofit and how you can leverage that to get, you know, this information for the benefit of your organization. Next.
I'm going to launch right before we do. I'm going to launch the first poll question we have. So here we go. I've distributed the poll, and the question was, are you familiar with the Community Reinvestment Act? And it was simple yes or no. I think our bankers might be surprised to know that so far there seems to be a pretty solid majority of, well, now it's getting closer to 50-50. How do you like that? That's why you let it go and happen. So 60%, 6 out of 10 folks on the call are saying yes, they're familiar with it, and 4 out of 10 are not.
So then this really is for the 410, but for the 6 out of 10, maybe you'll learn something new that'll help you with your approach to banks for CRA. So CRA has been around since 1977. It started actually because of Chicago and redlining, which is a practice that hopefully isn't done too much. It was revised twice in 95 and 2005. And right now there's a major undertaking to revitalize it again. And later on, we'll talk about the regulators that are in charge with regulating this act. But there's 3 regulators. One has come up with changes. The other 2 are still working on it. So it's an influx. It's going to change again. We're writing. This is based on what we know for now. So the main thing is that CRA was written to hold banks responsible for being responsive to the communities we serve. Again, this was brought about because of redlining. We are encouraged to help investigate, determine, and meet the needs of our communities that we operate in. But we have to use safe and sound banking operations. So we just can't make bad loans or whatever. They have to be good loans, but we have to focus on those communities. This is very, very important for you non-for-profits. CRA places a special emphasis on serving low to moderate income neighborhoods and individuals. So basically, we're supposed to serve our communities we serve. When we get examined for CRA, which we'll talk about later, we get credit for anything that benefits low to moderate income neighborhoods and individuals. So for us, if there's a special emphasis on those kind of products and projects. So not to say we won't do other things that don't get CRA credit, but that is our main emphasis. The other thing I want you to take away from this is that basically every bank designates a CRA officer to monitor the program, whatever. So if you're going to be approaching a bank for some kind of assistance, it's very important to get to the right person. Get the name of the CRA officer. We'll talk later on how you can find that out. And that way they know what you're talking about and you'll have the right ear. Otherwise, if you just go to a branch manager or whatever, you probably get lost in the shuffle. So, all right, the communities we serve. The next slide, please. So one of the requirements for CRA is we have to designate what is called an assessment area. And that's what we define to be our community for CRA purposes. So we say this is where we're going to be serving. And then when the examiners come in, they look and see, are we actually serving who we say we're going to be serving? And when we come up with an assessment area, we basically have to come up with the census tracts which are in that assessment area. And most banks pick their assessment area based on their main offices and branches and any deposit taking ATMs. They get those locations and then they pick census tracts around those areas. And that's where we are graded on. Are we making loans or making products available in those areas that are in our assessment area? And census tracts are very important because the regulators and the banks can look at those census tracts and decide what the income levels are in those census tracts. And that's another way where we get regulated and examined.
Great. This is Tony Smith. And as Paul shared, obviously banks, among other things, we're the beneficiaries of both deposit insurance. And secondly, we use the Fed wire system, which is the principal vehicle for wiring monies across not only the country, but across the world. And it gives the federal authorities a significant amount of regulatory and practical control over what we do. And so what you see are the three listed agencies that we have to report to depending on how we are organized as a lending and deposit taking institution. Noteworthy, obviously, you have the FDIC, the Federal Reserve Office of Controller of Currency, which we refer to as OCC. And then, of course, you have a whole host of rules that fall under what we call the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. So why don't we go to the next slide? Thank you. And so the vehicle by which the regulatory authorities monitor our compliance with, that is, compliance with the rules, is that we have three principal tests. One focusing on our lending activities, one on investment, and one on service. Lending is a very broad term that where considerable weight is given to what we do on the consumer and small business front. Essentially, again, as Paul mentioned, they want to make sure we're not redlining either consumers or businesses, and that that our activities reflect the neighborhoods that we're taking deposits from and where we're active. Investing activities is a little bit different. There are certain types of activities that are qualified as investments. It could be tax credits, it could be making, buying a bond or the likes. It could actually be take the form of being a direct investor in some kind of business or other activity. Service, probably the broadest category, is a measure of where we distribute our branches and ATMs. It's how we volunteer on CRA eligible activities. And not all volunteerism is CRA eligible, but there's a wide breadth of activities that are. And certainly working for many of our not-for-profits, serving in your boards is one of the prime ways that we get there. And again, examiners are looking to you essentially to hold your bank partners accountable for how we engage the community in our day-to-day activities. Again, giving you some additional authorities. Next slide. There are essentially 4 ratings that a bank can receive, ranging from outstanding, which is reserved for about the top 10% of all the banks in the country. Some 85+% are in the satisfactory category, and a very small few fall into the need to improve and substantial non-compliance buckets. I might also stress that we don't just get an overall grade as a bank, we actually get a grade for every what we call assessment area. These are largely counties or groups of counties. Chicago, for the most part, is considered Chicago and the collar counties, which would include Will and DuPage. And so you have what we call some of these multi-county assessment groups. Ultimately, it says it's not enough for a bank to do well in one geography when it's taking deposits or lending in multiple. So this gives some additional authority to the communities where we serve. We can't ignore them. And I believe that next slide is that mine as well? I want to make sure. Yeah, and so ultimately, how we perform on these exams is critical in a number of respects. If we don't pass, let's say overall, the regulatory authorities can essentially restrict the types of activities we might want to undertake, including acquiring another bank, opening another branch, and so on. It also gives rise to local advocacy to raise a complaint, to press that particular bank or organization to do something different in that community. So it's important, therefore, for you to be aware of what those CRA grades are. Again, not just overall, but in your geography.
So this is Lynette Briggs. So the most important thing for a not-for-profit, in my opinion, is to really understand the term community development. So that definition really will tell you as an organization how you could actually fit into a bank's CRA program. There are several CRA purposes, primarily affordable housing. So affordable housing could refer to affordable mortgage programs, affordable rent programs. So maybe you're a not-for-profit landlord and you're wanting assistance for that program. It also could be affordable housing programs that are specifically located in low or moderate income geographies. So learning that term, LMI, we tend to use all the time, is low or moderate income. So we have affordable housing, we have community services. So community services are those type of services, mostly like basic needs, health, education, that are really targeted towards low or moderate income individuals or in geographies. So think of like youth development programs for at-risk youth in a low income neighborhood. That would be what we would call a community service. Northern Illinois Food Bank, that's going to be another type. That's basic needs, and they're primarily serving low or moderate. So we're always looking at the majority of the beneficiaries of your service for either your organization or a specific program are going to meet that definition of low or moderate income. Activities that promote economic development, That's going to be those programs that are financing like small businesses that most especially are going to be creating jobs. And we're looking at permanent jobs. So like a construction project is really temporary. But if it's going to be, let's say they're building a hotel that is going to be bringing jobs to low-income residents so that they've got an opportunity, that could qualify possibly as a economic development activity. So next slide. Other activities come under the category of revitalize or stabilize. So revitalization and stabilization actually is an important category. That could be those activities that are qualified activities. It's been approved by either a federal, a state, local, or tribal government plan. So if it's a program that is specifically targeted and it's maybe in a community plan, it might qualify, especially if the beneficiaries of that project are going to be lower moderate income individuals or small businesses. The governing boards of an enterprise community or empowerment zone, those are another area where we would have maybe revitalization, stabilization. Activities that are going to help attract new or retain existing businesses or residents. When we're looking at distressed or underserved, the non-metropolitan middle income geographies, really we don't have any in the Chicago metropolitan area. So we don't really fall under that. But federally designated disaster areas occasionally comes up, especially like if we have like major floods or a tornado, and then FEMA or the president has declared it as a federal designated disaster area. Then if there is a program, it could be like the Salvation Army is coming in there to provide emergency services. It could be rebuilding businesses. Maybe a distribution warehouse was destroyed, which really provided jobs for low and moderate income. Then that could qualify under revitalization and stabilization. So not all activities in low and moderate income geographies are going to qualify unless they meet those criteria. So it has to explicitly be attracting new or retaining those existing businesses. It has to be a bona fide government plan to revitalize, stabilize the area, and it's going to receive greater weight if most responsive to community needs, including LMI individuals and neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So when we're considering what is the definition of LMI in the Chicago area, because I'm assuming most of the not-for-profits that are attending are all probably located in DuPage County. Low income, well, first of all, the median income in the Chicago metropolitan statistical area, that's the MSA, is $84,800. So that's 100% of median income. When we define low income, that means it's going to be less than 50% of the area median income. So that would be 42.4. And for moderate income, it's basically 50.01%, but it's less than 80% of the area median income. So between 42,401 and 67,840. If the majority of your clients or recipients of your services fall in that income category, then they're going to meet that definition of LMI. If you don't collect income information, then it's going to be more difficult for a bank to actually determine if it qualifies as a CRA activity. So if you have middle income, if you aren't collecting income, we don't really have an opportunity to determine that. So middle income is, as it says on the slide, is 67,840 up to 101,760. And upper income or high income is at least 120% of the area median income. So that here in DuPage would be 101,760. You can get this information updated periodically through the website at the ffiec.gov.
Lynette, so, well, we have a poll question at this point, but I do have a question for you. And for all those who are attending, please enter your questions into the question box and we will share them. My question for you is, if there is, if the nonprofit is in DuPage County, is it better for them to use the DuPage County numbers that are provided through different the county website and Impact DuPage websites and other areas, or is it best for them to use this Chicago area number?
There's rarely do we actually have DuPage having a separate number. If they're looking at their income, usually for the county programs, they are using the HUD's area median income for the Chicago metropolitan statistical area. So generally, most of us are going to use the MSA numbers because very few of the banks are located in DuPage County only. And even if they are, their assessment area might be greater than DuPage. So almost all of us would rely on the MSA number.
And then there's a question about from April, and April, you might have to clarify, but are you able to list the areas that would be considered appropriate for CRA by these definitions? And I think she was talking about the community development definitions in DuPage County. So are you referring to areas like cause areas, April, or are you referring to like some other definition? But the question is, are you able to list the areas that would be considered appropriate for CRA by the definitions that you provided for community development?
Well, remember in DuPage, it's also individuals. So if their income is under that 80%, they're going to be qualified as LMI. There are not that many low income geographies in DuPage County. There are more moderate than there are low. And again, if you go to the FFIEC, you can actually put an address into their mapping software and find out if it is a low, moderate, middle, or upper income census tract. But I would focus primarily on the income when it comes to DuPage County.
Right.
Great. So that was, I think that answered April's question. I'm going to go ahead and launch. I see no other questions in the box, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the second poll. The question is, has your organization or client base been negatively affected by COVID-19? I feel like that one's, I can almost predict the answer. Obviously for our bankers and our speaker panel, the answers are very close to or unequivocally 100% of the organizations. So to give you a sense of scope to our bankers, that's almost like 50 some odd organizations that are participating right now. And I can almost predict for all the other organizations that will get the recording later. The answer is absolutely. The majority of the organizations have been negatively affected by this pandemic. I will continue on to the next slide. And I think, Lynette, this is you.
Yeah, so the impact of COVID, that has really had a tremendous impact on many areas that really weren't even considered to be at risk because of the loss of jobs. So with loss of employment has put more stress on our food banks, our food pantries, our emergency service programs. So I would actually reach out to if you are doing a specific program or your programs were impacted by COVID in that you had additional costs. So let's say you were doing a program where you were providing, during the summer, you would typically provide additional food to families because the children were not receiving their breakfast and lunch through the free and reduced lunch program because they weren't in school. So now you are starting in March, you actually had this additional expense and your budget was set up to start in June. then that's something that is an additional expense caused by COVID-19. And that would be something that maybe your local banks might be considering for funding. They might even have a set aside specifically for COVID-19 related issues. You might be serving people who are looking for jobs, and you've had an increase in the number of those that are looking for employment. And maybe you have a new program for workforce development training, maybe to get them into jobs that allow them to work from home. Again, this is something that would be worthwhile approaching your bank about, because the agencies are recognizing, as long as we're staying within that safe and sound business banking practices, that there are opportunities for us to help support. Because the goal of CRA is for us to help our communities to build wealth, to be stable, to just have to improve their future. So if we can't stabilize now, then the future looks somewhat grim. So that's why I would definitely approach a bank if you have a program there. And so I'm done, and we go back to Tony.
Yeah, and Tony, before I advance, I just want to share one other question that came up. Would you, Barb is asking if you would be able to give an example of what programs or projects a bank would fund or support for a disabilities organization?
Well, that's a great question. So let me share with you that as an example, one of my largest clients is United Cerebral Palsy, or UCP Seguin, which provides essentially housing for individuals living with disabilities. And these are, for the most part, small group housing, anywhere from 3 to probably as many as 6 people. But for the most part, these are high quality homes in great neighborhoods, access to public transportation and the likes. We also support a number of organizations that specifically look to help people living with disabilities get into the job force. Another one of our large clients is the Hyde Park Day School and the Orthogenic Schools, both of which work with individuals with acute learning disabilities and provide them the intensive alternative form of education needed for them to essentially engage with society in a productive way, and more importantly, an independent way. So there are just a number of programs like this. So what I would suggest, and by the way, on the organizations that I just named, these were not only grants. We might also have made in fact, we did make direct investments in their facilities as co-owners of their property, so they could own it themselves, and we're the co-owners. And then, and over time, they buy us out with essentially no gain on the investment, and then we'll make loans on the same. So people living with disabilities are an important part of our practice, and it's also evident in our tax credit practice, where we will aggressively buy the tax credits, low-income housing or new market or other, needed to build those facilities.
Can I just add? I was going to say that you have to document that the clients, though, are LMI, because that's the main qualifier. So, for example, you could have, I'm just going to pick breast cancer research, whatever. That would not qualify for a CRA because it goes across all income levels. You have to document that the client base is LMI.
Yeah, it's a great question. What we found with a number of our organizations that serve people with living with disabilities, many of them did qualify on an income basis. Some were highly reliant on Social Security, or had also qualified for housing vouchers or other things. So absolutely providing evidence that you have a qualified base helps. I found that it wasn't very difficult with when we take our residents that are living with disabilities. Unfortunately, there is a high concentration of LMI individuals in this particular population. So absolutely take advantage of that. And what's important there is, as Lynette pointed out, Even if you're not in a low income geography, you might be serving low to moderate income peoples. That too is a qualifier.
Right.
I'd also just remind everyone that most banks, in addition to their CRA giving, have another pocket of money that reflects their general giving, and that, as one of my colleagues will discuss, will align with their general mission orientation as a lending organization. You know, we can't solve all problems. So if we take PNC as an example, we decided to concentrate on prenatal through third grade, believing that if we intercept families that are struggling at that stage in their lives, we help break the cycle of poverty that is often inherited by their children. So our Grow Up Great program is our vehicle for doing that, and that is not just CRA, that is for all children. But getting back to the presentation, you know, I would highlight, you know, we obviously got these next three sides. There are a number of ways that we meet our CRA obligation. And the first test is on loans, where we lend and who we lend to. So it's a two-pronged test that looks at how much we're lending in low to moderate income geographies. And so even if DuPage County doesn't have a lot of low income tracts, you might have a number of moderate income tracts. And so let's make sure we understand what moderate income tracts are in your neighborhood and look at the people that you are focused on serving, because it is really a people orientation. But loans can also qualify a moderate income tract if they are a part of that that municipality's development plan. So oftentimes our municipalities look at areas that either have some blight or are underutilized, had factories closed. There are a number of reasons why a tract may merit a need for redevelopment. We saw a number of our downtowns in many of our little cities that make up, or towns that make up our counties, and found that, you know, industry had moved away, and therefore the people suffered. And so redevelopment or TIF and other districts were formed to arrest that particular oppression. And so if you have a project that is going to take place in one of those geographies, that could be a CRA qualifier. Again, it's not automatic, but it could be. Have the discussion with your bank. So while there's largely a focus on consumer and small businesses, larger businesses matter. Then we get to investments, the next slide. And banks can make what many of you would consider traditional investments. We buy a bond, we direct invest in the ownership, opportunity zone investments, tax credit investments. There are a whole array of options, but grants also count as an investment under this test. And banks generally want to have their giving, their philanthropy, reflect where they're gathering deposits and making loans. So if you know that the bank is present in your town, as we are and the others here are, there's a good chance that making grants in your community is a priority. And so understand why, what their priorities are, and follow on those. And then, of course, this grants could include in-kind donations. For us, the most recent type of donation given, quite frankly, is real estate. As banks continue to close branches, and we made a recent announcement that we're closing a number of these as well, to reflect the fact that people today want to bank on their phone, on their laptop, on their iPads, and the likes. So we're adapting to that environment, but rather than leaving a branch vacant and contributing to blight, we're looking in many cases to repurpose those. So the last one I closed in my region, we actually gave to the Urban League, which converted it into a job training center. And on the ground floor, they opened up a credit union. So it both served to preserve a financial institution in that neighborhood and to help with job training and creation for underserved, underemployed peoples. And the last slide for me, the next one, is services. The third criteria under the CRA exam is how well we serve the community. And that's largely a matter of where we choose to have branches and ATMs. And then it also includes qualifying service activities, which would include serving on a board, a not-for-profit, or not more specifically, a not-for-profit that primarily serves low to moderate income peoples or geographies. It could also include how well we utilize our technical capabilities or competencies as bankers to better a community's delivery of services to low to moderate income people. So as an example, I've been appointed to a couple of county boards and city committees, but I specifically chose to be on committees or boards that explicitly are focused on the bettering of LMI communities. And so that's a hint, by the way. Having your banker on your board helps, having them on a committee helps, having them on a junior committee helps in terms of establishing connectivity with that bank. And so I'm going to pause there. I don't know if my teammates have any other observations about these three areas. Wanted to give you a chance to jump in.
The only thing I could think of is the examiners are always looking for innovative products, services, or whatever. So there may be something that we didn't cover in any of these slides that may be of interest to the examiners. So, sometimes come up with a new project or proposal and see what happens. Maybe the bank never thought of it and would be willing to do it.
Oh, you know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that. So I will tell you, we just approved just a couple of days ago a $10 million loan and investment facility for a local not-for-profit that will essentially focus its money on helping businesses in areas that were hard hit by either COVID-19 or by civil unrest or other activities that emerged during the last 120 days. And they recognize that, hey, there are particularly communities outside of Chicago, towns that also are deeply struggling, and we wanted a way to get in there. So this facility is very narrowly focused on those very hard hit geographies. And I think as banks, we're constantly given opportunities to be creative, but I'm going to tell you it's more likely that idea isn't going to evolve with us. We're not always the most creative folks. It's going to evolve with you. You're in the trenches. You're doing the good work day to day, and you're going to see that unique need that might appeal to us. So thanks, Paul, for mentioning.
I'm going to. Sorry, yes. Sorry, go ahead, Lynette. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to jump in. And there's one thing. You might not be running a not-for-profit that fully falls into the definition of what we call community development, but you might have a program that is specifically targeted to a core group. And that program, we could have restricted dollars going to that program if it meets the definition of community development. So maybe you serve in general only 30% of your population is low or moderate income, but you've created a special program specifically for, it could be financial education for at-risk youth who live in low income or moderate income areas. That program itself could also be qualified, even though the organization itself isn't generally qualified.
Hey, Len, that's again another great example. So to give you guys a live example, the city of Rockford understood that its low-income residents, and particularly young men and women of Latino and African-American descent, weren't able to go to college. And so Rockford Promise, even though it worked with community colleges that quite frankly reflected the overall geography in terms of demographics, they had this program specifically to help this underserved segment get into college, and with a particular focus on some of these single parent households. So it was to Lynette's point, it was a program within a broader program that might not have been CRA eligible, but made eligible because it created this very specific program and allowed us to do something we really wanted to do because we really wanted to help these kids. So great, great.
I'm going to go to Jim. Sorry, go ahead, Lynette.
Give a quick example too. Like in DuPage County, there's NAMI DuPage, which has to do with mental illness. So NAMI by itself wouldn't qualify for CRA, but they have a workforce development or job training development program which does qualify. So there's an example of something that's a disability that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to qualify, but there is a special program, as Lynette said.
I'm going to also just, to keep us moving, we have about 12 minutes left. I know the next coming slides are really important. Because this slide talks about board service, it's a good opportunity for me to share with you all the nonprofits who are attending and may not be familiar. Giving DuPage does have a board match program where the nonprofit organization, our role is volunteerism, and being a board member is the uber volunteer position. So our role is to connect nonprofits who complete their own application looking for board members with individual candidates who are seeking board positions. And we are actually, and even I'll probably edit our board match application a little bit more based on this presentation today. But we have some questions around whether the nonprofit serves LMI households or clients. And so we are trying to make sure that bankers specifically, or lending institutions, financial institutions, candidates from those companies are actually matched to nonprofit organizations that are teeing up or serving that LMI demographics so that the banker can also meet their CRA application. So I will share that after the presentation. When I send out the recording, I will send you a link to the board match application as well. And we may continue to sort of tweak or edit that application based on feedback from the bankers today. I'm going to launch the final question before we get to the next slide. And so the last question is your organization currently partnering with a bank for financial or other support? If you could please share your responses right now, that would be great. Again, is your organization currently partnering with a bank for financial or other support? Bankers, once again, you might be surprised by the answer, but an overwhelming majority, about 80%, 75 to 80%. Oh, look, it's more folks are chiming in. It's more like 75-25 now. So it looks like 7 out of 10 of the organizations are, in fact, partnering with a bank right now. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And
all right, well, this will be mainly for the 25%. So make sure you get all your ducks in a row before you, approach a bank. It makes sense to look at banks in your service area. And if you already currently deal with a bank, you can start with them. Thank God for the internet. You can Google, find out what you can. If you go on the bank's websites, most banks have something that's title like in the community, corporate responsibility, whatever. And if you go there, they'll usually have a little blurb about what they've been doing in the community. It's like a puff piece, whatever, but it gives you an idea of what the bank is looking for or what they're involved with. I've said that before. Get the name of the bank's CRA officer. It's very important to get to the right person. It's a rifle approach as opposed to a shotgun approach. All banks have to have a CRA notice in their lobby that talks about their commitment to CRA, and it includes language in there and who to contact, who the CRA officer is, so you can do that. It could be on the website, or just ask. You go into a bank and they have to give you that information. Find out who the CRA officer is and make sure your appeal is directed to the right person. We talked before about you can look at a bank's performance evaluation. On slide 7, we told you the link where you could go look for it. To give you an idea, there is a section, they talk about loans, service, and investments. You can see what the bank has done in the past. You get an idea what their priorities are. And if it's a big enough bank, get a hold of their annual report. They usually have something about that in the annual report. Next slide. Okay, so these are the kind of things you can ask for. And again, as we mentioned before, this isn't an all-inclusive list. You may find something else that is needed in your community. So don't be afraid to bring it up as long as you present it in a rational manner. So a loan, like I said, it could be a loan for your organization or for a specific project, whatever. Maybe in your community, there's a need for a certain type of loan, like a big buzzword in CRA is small dollar loans. So instead of clients going to currency exchanges to get cashier's checks, whatever, maybe there's a need for that in the community. Maybe instead of going to pawn shops, there's a need for small loans, whatever. Investment vehicle, grant or sponsorship, whatever, that's an outright writing a check. That goes without saying. Volunteer opportunities are a big deal. If you talk to the right person, the CRA officer, you tell them what you're looking for. The caveat is that usually if it's a bank volunteer opportunity, the bankers have to use their bank expertise for helping you out. That excludes board. Board is separate. But for example, serving on a finance committee, maybe doing accounting work, maybe someone in your marketing department would do some marketing work for a not-for-profit, that kind of stuff. Or it's an IT person helping with your website, that kind of thing. And advocacy, so whatever. If you know your communities, if you think that maybe a certain branch needs to be open longer, or you need ATMs or whatever, or any other kind of thing you think is needed in the community, bring it to the attention of the CRA officer and say, here's something that we feel you can do for our community, and maybe that will get the ball rolling. Next slide.
So this is Lynette again. To tag on to what Paul was just saying, one thing where we're talking about how the activity needs to be specific to the expertise or the professional skills of the banker. One committee that a lot of people sort of forget about, but it does qualify for CRA, is a fundraising committee. So I look at my retail people, they're really good at fundraising. They understand money. So tap into them to help you with your fundraising activities, and that gets you that connection with the bank. But when we're talking about how you're going to...
Lynette, you just got everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, we forget that fundraising is a qualified activity, as long as it's a community development qualified organization. So you want to be specific when you're approaching a financial institution or a bank for funding. And they're all going to be a little bit different. Usually you can go on their website to find out how you can apply for funds. Some of them may require an invitation, so that's why it's necessary to actually have that relationship with whoever is responsible for CRA. It might not be directly a CRA officer if it's a large bank. It might be someone like Tony and I, we're community development market managers, but we are part of the CRA department. It may be an online application that you need to complete. So I know with us, you have to send in a letter of inquiry, and then you are invited to go through the online portal for an invitation from the foundation. Be prepared. Provide information about your organization's mission. This is something where I would encourage you to look at your websites. Make sure your websites are really telling the story of what you do. Make sure your mission is there. Who are you serving? I think that's the biggest frustration I have when I go onto a website looking to understand about an organization, and they don't tell me who their client base is or who they're serving, at least in About Us or something. So look at your About Us page and make sure that you're including information to tug at the heartstrings of a bank for CRA.
Mm-hmm.
Your financials. Yeah, we do. We do. We're the rose-colored glasses department.
Yeah, that's right.
Your financials, if you can, put your 990 on your website. Make sure you have it prepared when you want to approach a bank for funding. Know your client base. at least 50% of that client base should be defined as low or moderate income or serving small businesses. Most banks are going to require you to be a 501c3, but you might be, for some, they might be more flexible. You might be a 501c4 or 501c6. If you are, but you're still doing a community development activity, you might need a fiscal agent. So you want to be prepared that you've got an organization there in the background ready to step forward to be your fiscal agent. And prioritize your ask. Don't just say, hey, you should fund us because we're a not-for-profit. You need to let us know why we should be funding you and how you meet that definition of community development. Maybe it could be the organization, or it could be a specific program that you are targeting. Maybe you're targeting a response for COVID-19, or you're sponsoring a program specifically for low or moderate people. Maybe it's seniors who are at home, they can't get out, they can't go get their groceries, so it might be a food delivery program, and they're all on Social Security or a fixed income. So tell us also how it's going to affect LMI. So we like to know about impact. So in your inquiry, you want to tell us, what are the conditions? Why are these people in need? And what would be the impact of that program? Is it going to affect LMI? Is it going to affect distressed or underserved neighborhoods or a disaster impact area also? So next slide.
And as you go on to this next slide, I want to let everyone know we're going to probably end up going about 5 minutes long. We're almost at 10 o'clock, and we have this slide and one more before we get to some really good questions. I want to be able to get to all your questions, so if you folks could hang out with us for a few more minutes past 10 o'clock, we'd be grateful. Go ahead, Lynette.
Oh, and one thing I didn't mention, which I meant to mention, is when you're being specific about your ask, be aware data is really, really important. So collect that data. Tell us and be prepared to explain how you determine that your client base is going to be low or moderate income or small business. Also, don't forget that it could be a program that's creating jobs. The buzzwords, of course, you're putting those into your applications always help. Community development, I hope you guys now understand what community development means. LMI, or lower moderate income. Neighborhood stabilization, or it could be a community stabilization revitalization program specifically related to maybe a municipalities program. Job creation, again, it should be permanent. Be prepared. You want to provide as much supporting documentation as you can. Again, you want to lead us down that garden path of letting us understand that, yes, this program meets the definition of community development. Next slide. So be realistic. Every bank, we all have different priorities. Our management has determined what our strategic priorities are. So might be a financial institution that really wants to focus in this exam period on workforce development. Like Tony was saying, a PNC wants to focus on that prenatal to, I think he said, through 3rd grade. So we might have those strategic goals. And so if your program can fit into that strategic goal or priority, that gets you probably more points. We are encouraged, but we are not required to provide CRA-related assistance. So we all have budgets. We get asked all the time we're attacked from thousands of different directions, and we have a limited number of dollars that are available. There might be a few that don't have limited dollars, but most of us do. So you want to make sure that when you are approaching, you are, again, telling them how important this program would be and how it will impact the community that they want to serve. pick a bank that's going to align with your organization goals and has a presence in the community you serve. So you don't want to approach a bank that has no branches in your community, because they're not going to give it priority in all likelihood. Banks do have sort of a bias of assisting, they're looking at, like any other scoring sort of model, they're looking at various things. How good is our partnership? What is our relationship? Is your organization an existing client? Do we already have a loan with you? Do we perhaps already have accounts with you? That could be one way of starting the relationship. We're of course going to be more favorable if you already have an employee that's very engaged with your programs. So maybe someone who is volunteering on a regular basis. Even better, they're serving on a committee, or they are serving on a board. If they're doing regular financial education workshops, that's a big one also for service activities. That's where we can really engage our retail bankers and our mortgage lenders, is helping you with doing presentations on budgeting, credit, home ownership, those sort of topics. We're more than happy to do that. And that is a way of demonstrating that we're engaged, that we have a partnership. You really should be also taking into account the size of the bank. So a small bank has a smaller budget. They also have a little bit different rules for how they are evaluated than a larger bank. So budget amounts may already have been set. So it depends upon what time of the year, whether it's the fiscal year, calendar year. They might have already planned it out and they don't have funds, but establishing that relationship now maybe gets you on the possibility of being funded maybe next year. And next year isn't that far off. So that I'm done. So I guess we're to questions.
Yep, and there's a lot of great questions, so I'm going to just start tackling them. I'm going to ask the panelists to just kind of divvy up, and so maybe have one of you answer the question for each one. There's about 5 questions that are out here. And then if you have something to add, the others can kind of speak in. The first is, are there different ways to approach banks depending upon the size of the financial institution? And are there different, so the question is about what's the approach depending on the size of the institution?
Well, I'll just start by saying it's the main thing is, like I said, get the name of the CRA officer. I think it's probably more important in a bigger bank, because the CRA officer may be downtown, maybe in another state, who knows, whatever, but there should be a local connection. So find out who the CRA officer is. And if it's a smaller bank, it's the same thing. You ask who's the CRA officer and you'll probably be able to meet him right away, straight face to face.
I would also encourage you to get to know your local branch. Get to know the people in that branch, the branch manager. Get them engaged, because if they're engaged, they're going to find the CRA officer and say, hey, I want to support this organization more.
Yep, exactly.
I have a very specific question around an adult who has parents who have disabilities. So the question is, if there's an adult who has parents with disabilities and they've been allotted the guardianship, is the income grade measured by the parental income of the parents who are disabled, or is it based on the adult who has guardianship, so the participant's income? Whose income is used to sort of determine?
Depends upon who's receiving the service.
Yeah, and I just to clarify, banks don't usually make CRA donations to individuals, it's to organizations. So I want to clarify that question is that a donation to an individual or to an organization that is servicing those adults?
Yeah, I think the question is more about definitely supporting a nonprofit organization, but maybe with this nonprofit organization, they're finding that they have adults who have guardianship over parents who are disabled, and then where does that sort of income determination come in? So, and I think Lynette, you also said it depends on who the organization is serving. Are they serving the adults with the guardianship, or are they serving the parents with the disabilities?
Right.
Yeah.
Helen, if you have follow-up questions, you definitely can see their emails here. So feel free to follow up with any of them if we didn't actually answer it correctly. There's the next question. Do nonprofits, and Lynette, I think you covered this a little bit, but do nonprofits need to have an account with a bank in order to apply for CRA funding? It will help your chances at all, or does it make a difference really?
I have found it doesn't make a huge difference. It's not required, absolutely not required. It is though a way to, you're basically building that relationship with that branch again. And so now maybe, hey, I've got my account here. I really could use some help with maybe my fundraising committee. So starting that, building that part.
I would add to that, however, it's not uncommon that your advocate is actually your banker, and your banker says, hey, look, I have a relationship with, we'll call it Goodwill Industries, and they are raising monies to do X, Y, and Z in the community. That's a powerful advocate. It can't be a tit for tat. It can't be conditioned on our having business with you, but we'd be less than frank if we didn't say, it certainly helps. That's another advocate on your team pressing the bank to give you money. So take advantage of that.
There's one more question. And then I have a question too. What is the best way to assess a bank's priority category?
Ask them.
Yeah, I asked the CRA officer.
Yeah, a lot of times it's visible in what we publish, especially larger banks. A lot of what they do in the community, in the public realm, is visible online. You'll see Bank X gave this amount of money to some organization in your community. So look at what they're doing. Today, you have the advantage of being able to look at their social media presence and use that to inform your assessment. But absolutely, when you can, have the conversation. And it's not always with someone in the branch, because unfortunately for bigger banks, the decisioning is oftentimes in the office of the market president or the likes. And it's not always easy to navigate to that. But certainly I have found media really helps. I watch my competitors all the time and go, oh my God, look at what they just did. And look for that. And then I also say, recognize that for every ask I get, or that I fund, there are probably 10 asks. And so how do you differ from all of the other folks doing what you do? And why is it good for the bank? Think selfishly. We like opportunities that we brand as our own. It's not uncommon that we're the largest funder for an organization because we like that top branding. So egos do matter in this business, whether folks admit it or not.
We like good press releases.
Just for the sake of time, we are at 10 minutes after, so I'm going to try to wrap things up. I will provide everyone with the contact information. To my nonprofit colleagues, we hope this was a useful presentation. I walked away with a couple of key points, and I think you did too. Like all things, the relationship building matters, right? So we're building relationships is what we do in the nonprofit world every single day, and so clearly it matters in this instance. Secondly, like all things, again, in our nonprofit world, your ability to research and dig into the bank and the approach before you make the approach matters as much as the building the relationship. So knowing and being informed, looking up the CRA information and the references that the panelists have shared, it's really incumbent upon us to do our homework before we make the approach. And third, because who knew that a great path to securing that relationship with a bank is through volunteerism, board service, serving on committees. So I'm expecting from my nonprofit colleagues who are on this call to submit many board match applications to our end. For those who we are doing, Paul and I are hosting a program for board match with bankers with the CRA group next week, and so, or very soon here, so I think it's next week, I don't know. Anyway, so that's going to be just for the banking and lending institutions side for me to try to recruit potential board candidates and individuals to serve on committees and such. So if you have questions, we can take them, but honestly, I am encouraging you to reach out directly to the bank itself, and hope that you found this presentation useful. Again, I want to thank our presenters, Paul Jerish, Lynette Briggs, and Tony Thurman for their expertise. We're hearing some good positive feedback in the chat, as well as the questions that this was a very good program, so we appreciate that feedback. Thanks, everyone. Two quick announcements for Giving DuPage. One, we are hosting a countywide blood drive. I will be sharing in the follow-up email with all of you. I hope that you can share with others. We are hosting a countywide blood drive starting this Sunday, the 20th to the 27th. There will be 8 different locations. We have a goal to collect over 500 units of blood. The reason why we're hosting this program is because we know that blood supplies are really, really low. So I want to share that with you. And our October program will be on virtual fundraising. I will also be sneaking in a virtual volunteerism program somewhere in the docket in October. And we also have some NIU classes coming up around HR. And then all of this will be included in your follow-up email. We have not opened the registration for the virtual fundraising program in October, and we'll be following that up in October and November with a 6-part mini digital marketing lab experience. So wanting to let you know. Beth, you're asking about Volapalooza. We have decided to not do Volapalooza this year because of the fact that it's a program attended by 300 people. So unfortunately, we are not able to do it safely this year. We couldn't figure out a way to present it virtually and properly. I guarantee you, as things drag on next year, we'll have some version of Volapalooza next year, virtual or very, very safely in person. Yes, the PowerPoint will be available to all, and we will be sending it with the recording afterwards. With this, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I appreciate everyone's time today. Sorry we went a bit over, but wanted to just make sure we covered all the questions. Thank you, everyone. Be well, be safe, and thank you to our panelists, Lynette, Paul, and Tony. Thank you very much.